What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB network. We are Los Angeles Sports. Joining me as always, the man, not the myth, but certainly the legend, Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. What's up, brother? Happy Tuesday to you. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. There's no myth about me.
No myth. That's what I'm saying. No myth.
Nobody's talking about me.
In the flesh.
It's this is a tough couple of days in a row. I got the Rams game on Sunday, and then watched Notre Dame lose valiantly.
Yeah, they made it interesting, at least at the end.
They made it interesting. Almost made some bettors really upset there at the end, but yeah, this is sports.
This is sports. They know how to break your heart. And for Rams fans and all of us here at the LAFB Network, obviously broken hearts on Sunday. Rams so close at the end there, but fall 28-22 to the Eagles in Philly. Valiant effort. I thought a good game overall. We'll get into that briefly. I mean, obviously got to talk about the game and what transpired, but then we'll talk a little bit about Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and what their futures could potentially hold with this Rams organization. But before we get into that, show as always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Still stuff to bet on, no Rams, but the Super Bowl. Everyone loves bet on the Super Bowl. All the prop bets. BetOnline has hundreds of Super Bowl prop bets you can bet on, or if you want to take a team, but they have the best money lines, the best spreads, the best over-unders. All of it can be found at betonline.ag. So head to BetOnline. Tell them the guys at the LAFB Network sent you. BetOnline, where the game starts. So Skinny, 28-22. To put it bluntly, the inefficiencies is maybe a harsh word, but the things that this Rams team struggled with all season long reared its ugly head in this one and was really the reason why they lost this game. I'll give my breakdown, but just your overall thoughts of this tough loss by our Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, you saw those things rear their ugly heads. That's for sure. Inconsistency on both sides of the ball. I think they put themselves in a really good position to win this game. But then you look at a couple of turnovers. That definitely weighed on it as well. You don't give up two big running plays like that if your running defense is stout and controlling the game. And a good amount of pressure on Stafford as well. Obviously, the Eagles aren't slouch at getting to the passer, but these are the things that we've seen all season, and it's that was their undoing in this game, and it's to be expected, especially on the defensive side. We came into it going, this is a really inexperienced unit, especially up front. Not a lot of these guys have played together. That's another thing. So on defense, which is the star. So it's hard to harp on the defense, and it's hard to harp on this game whatsoever because of the really nasty looking conditions out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is the team we watched all season. Sometimes it looks so exciting and you can see it happening. I think on that first drive, I texted you, who is this Rams team, with some red zone running plays.
Yeah.
They dropped it in there. So, yeah, I think, it's more interesting looking forward than looking backward, which is probably why we're going to spend most of the episode talking about that. But I think, this overall, the team overperformed what I thought it did. I think it acquitted itself nicely after a really rough performance. The first time they took on the Eagles, at least they were able to hang with them.
Yeah.
Despite all these things. So those are all kind of my big view.
Yeah. For me, it was unfortunate because, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses, but it really came down to 3 plays. And that's what football is a lot of times, right? It's 1 play, 2 plays. I mean, unless you're getting blown out of the stadium, I mean, it 1-score games come down to 1 or a handful of plays. And this one, I thought the defense played, in my opinion, this defense played fantastic, except for 3 plays. And those 3 plays were absolutely critical. Like the turnovers, you rarely win a game if you lose the turnover battle, especially 0-2, Rams with their 2 fumbles, and they had an almost another fumble in the red zone that they were able to recover. But off those turnovers, they only gave up 2 field goals. I mean, gave up 6 points off those turnovers. The defense actually rebounded and bailed out the offense. But it came down to those 3 broken running plays, the 2 50-plus yard touchdowns from Saquon Barkley and the whatever it was 46-yard touchdown run from Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's the game right there. It's 21 points on 3 plays, 50-plus almost on all 3 of them that were basically each running play untouched from the line of scrimmage through the secondary. And so you even just stop them, not necessarily give up 40 yards, but don't let them in the touchdown, because we saw how good this defense was actually in the red zone. Rams could have come out on top of this game. So I think that's what's so unfortunate is the defense actually played really well. You look at the rushing yards, what was it, 290 total? I think Saquon had 205 by himself. You would say, man, they just gashed him again. There's 3 plays. I mean, other than that, they held Saquon fairly in check. He had his moments, but overall they held him in check. It was just those 2 busted plays from him, and then obviously the Jalen Hurts one. And I think that's what gets so frustrating. Go ahead.
I have a crazy statistic to throw at you guys. So the Rams defense allowed the lowest success rate among all the division teams, the division playoff teams, lowest success rate against the Eagles. They allowed the most EPA per play on the ground. So that both of those were true. The lowest success rate and the most EPA per play because of those, and that's the disparity. They were pretty good against the run on a whole, but it's, this is a game, the points matter, EPA doesn't matter, in theory, but it matters a lot when they turn into real points. So crazy statistic that had to be pointed out. Yeah,
no, good find on that. And that's the tail of the game, right? Like played well, but obviously not when it those momentary moments, which is unfortunate. Jared Verse, just a one-man wrecking crew, 5 total pressures per PFF, 2 sacks. So put his money where his mouth is whatever. I think it got blown into proportion, his comments about the fans. Like, great.
Nobody likes Philly fans.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's just preaching to the choir. Who does like Philly fans? So, and I think they're some of the best fans in sports, but that means nobody likes him. And so I thought that was, blown out of proportion, but that's what you should do. This is a playoff game. It's going to maybe turn into a rivalry in the coming years with the youth of the teams. And so I think that's great. I think another positive I would take, statistically, the Eagles had the number 1 defense in football. We talked about, well, technically we didn't actually do a preview together. I did it on your off day. So, but I talked about, Vic Fangio, how he's really turned this defense around. But we've talked about in the past, the Vic Fangio defense and how it's been a kryptonite to Sean McVay and the Sean McVay offense. And only 22 points, and 2 of those came off of safety. So 20 points. So I wouldn't say that the offense was, having their way, but with the conditions, the way they were and the, what they were up against, I thought the offense, played pretty well. Now, what was hard, and you mentioned it in your beginning monologue, it was inconsistent. It was an offense that on some drives looked great. Other drives could do absolutely nothing. Like it felt like throughout this game, Skinny, like the defense would get a big stop. And it was like, all right, cool. This is a moment for the offense to really either get back within reach or pull ahead or do something. And in reality, they just kept, 3 and outs or just couldn't get anything going. And so I think that was the real unfortunate thing, was the inconsistency of the offense.
Yeah, definitely. I think, had I been able to preview this, I think, getting up early was going to be important, and, not falling into a deficit, I guess is what I want to point out. And they were never in that necessarily, but, desperation sets in. And when you're in the elements and you have to start throwing the ball, Matthew Stafford had over 300 yards in this game passing. And they put him in that position to have to do that. And, I think he did the best that he could to make this happen. But, just looking at there's big question marks, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, both question marks, question marks in this game. You see him getting hurt and again, it's hard to criticize anybody in these conditions, but they didn't drop any passes or anything like that, but it's it's a tough one to comment on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just because there are like, and this has been the problem for me this whole season. Is like I don't know when and when they're going to turn it on, when they're going to turn it off, and that was true in this game as well.
And like I said, the defense, I think, bailed them out on those turnovers, but that also, it's like when the offense you thought was getting a little momentum, that's when they had critical mistakes. And we said that a lot throughout the year, right? Like the offense would do some things, but then have a critical mistake at a critical moment in the game. Like turnovers are never good. It's hard to win any football game when you have turnovers, but if it's early on and you can rebound from it or whatever. But, in the second half, Kyren has his fumble, and then Stafford, who, like you said, I thought played overall pretty well in this game, but you're in the pocket, it's collapsing. Like, what are you doing letting the ball just flail? Like he's a vet. He knows, like, what are you doing letting the ball just flail around like that and get the easy strip sack in the pocket. So, and then that, that was a moment I want to say was near midfield when the offense actually had a little momentum going, and then you turn it over and give them points. So, I mean, a lot to be addressed about this offense in the offseason. And that's what we'll kind of, I think, get to is talking about Stafford and Kupp, because of, how much money this was spent on this offense, and they were not the strong point of the team. And again, we're being overly critical. This is a team that was a play away from the NFC Championship game. So it's not like it was awful, but things you want to see improve. You always want to see improvement. So, but before quickly we get to that, just one last thing about this game. In your opinion, Skinny, how big of a loss was Braden Fisk getting injured in seemingly, what was it, the first defensive possession, second defensive possession, and the fact that he was then out the rest of the game with that injury? Do you think, how big of a factor do you think that had in this rush defense in terms of those three big plays?
Yeah, I mean, he is the team's leading sacker. We were looking at it today because Jared Verse just won the Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Pro Football Writers of America, and he
did you vote on that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you're a voter, right? That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you voted Jared Verse, I assume, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay,
I don't know what the breakdown was, but if you voted for anybody else, anyway, he only had four sacks on the year. Braden Fisk had 8.5.
Yeah,
which is that's incredible. So obviously he's taking advantage. He's eating when he can. And it goes to show you the kind of the thin margins this team always operates on. They're always expecting their starters to be in there. And, they've done a hell of a job reconstructing the defensive line over the last 2 seasons. But you got to find some depth at that position. For multiple reasons, run game, and for this, because not everybody's Aaron Donald. Not everybody's going to play 99% of games or whatever it was that that he ended up playing. Yeah, I mean he's such a force on passing downs that it's a lot for the Eagles to make up for on the offensive line. So it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a huge loss, and it was interesting because it looked like he could potentially come back. I mean, he was on the sidelines for the whole first half, had his helmet on. So we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't heard the severity of the injury yet. But it looked like he was coming back. And then after the half, it was just all downgraded to out. So they must have reevaluated at half or basically decided it was too severe once looking at it in the locker room. But yeah, that was a huge loss. And, him being in the middle of that front, you mentioned the pressure. Now this front was able to contain Jalen Hurts in the passing game. I mean, he only had 125 yards passing or whatever. Yeah. And they were able to contain him with the sacks. They had the safety, like I mentioned. So they were really good in that regard, but I think just having that other big body talent of Fisk in the run defense obviously was a big loss. Bobby Brown, I thought, had a good game. I thought Bobby Brown played really well, had that nice TFL in the backfield kind of late in the second half. So there's a lot to be excited about with this team moving forward. And I think this team exceeded expectations for just about everyone. I think you and I both had them making the playoffs before the season, but after a 1-4 start, we're definitely questioning, what could happen with this team. And they credit to Sean McVay and the staff, what they were able to get out of these players and make this run and win a playoff game and be on the brink of winning another one to go to the NFC Championship. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team, specifically the defense. I saw someone, I don't know who, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I saw someone on Twitter kind of say like a checklist of what the Rams should do. And one of their check was like, evaluate if Chris Shula is the right guy for the job. I'm paraphrasing, but that to me, I was like, I don't think that there needs to be any evaluation. Shula seems like a superstar as a defensive coordinator. So that was a fantastic hire for Sean McVay when everyone was kind of questioning it because there was not a lot known about Chris Shula in terms of play calling ability and schematically what he would bring, but how much he grew throughout the year, to me is incredible. And he should win assistant of the year, but he's got a lot of competition. Obviously the guy he went against in this game, Vic Fangio, will probably be up for that award as well, as they were number one in every category. But when you look at just what he had to work with, the canvas that he had, the art that came out of that canvas that he had, I mean, I don't think there's any denying he did the best job with what he was given.
You think about a guy like Raheem Morris coming in. That guy had like decades of coaching experience. He had been a head coach before he was a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And so like when he came in and did it, it was like, well, yeah, he's got plenty of experience. He knows tons about this league and all the positions and Shula, he's been around for a minute, but he was always kind of like this like guy that just kind of hung around McVay
just on
and
staff.
Like, yeah. Maybe he was just on staff because he's a good buddy, and like turns out, oh no, that guy's got some game.
Dude can coach.
Yeah, so
you can coach.
Yeah, so they're going to hang on to him as long as they can until he's taken away by another team.
Yeah, which he might have one more year before he's a head coach based on how the Sean McVay tree works. But yeah, that's slam dunk. I mean, fantastic, and in my opinion, like I said, should be the assistant of the year. So, but with how bright the future is, Skinny, and we'll pivot to this now. And how great this season was, and Rams fans should be proud of how this season went, especially with how it started, and and what they did for the city, last week beating the Vikings and how memorable that was. There are going to be a lot of questions about this offense in this offseason, and most notably, and we'll have all offseason to dissect everything, so we won't spend a ton of time on it now. We'll just basically take what comments were given after the game. Most notably, their two biggest stars in terms of name recognition and in terms of cap hits on the salary cap in Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Now, Stafford 2 years left on his deal, and I'll toss to you for the quote. We'll just start with Well, let's start with Kupp because quarterback. As much as we love Kupp, quarterback is the most important position. So we'll end with that. So let's start with Kupp. We talked about it a lot down the stretch. Like Kupp seemingly was just not involved in the offense, even in this game. Now it's a hard game for passing, but still. Stafford 345 yards, 300 plus yards passing. Like it went to someone, and it still didn't go much to Kupp.
He ended up with five catches for 70, 60 some yards, something like that. So
yeah, which is great. But I think two of those were on that last drive.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And so before that was still just not as involved. And again, Stafford did a good job spreading the ball around in this game. You got to take what the defense gives you. But as the body of work for the second half of the season, it just, whether it was Kupp's side or the Rams side, he was just not the Cooper Kupp that we've known to love in this system with this team. And asked kind of after the game about his future, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically just said, like, I want to be here, but it's out of my control. I don't know. Like I'm not saying he didn't say anything wrong. That's absolutely true. But it felt very ominous in a sense, considering his name was in trade rumors at the deadline. He was not involved in the offense very much down the stretch. And then he's really just kind of saying, like, I'd love to be here, but I don't know. Like, instead, like, again, didn't say anything wrong, but you'd hope he'd just be like, yeah, I'm going to be here next year. And you hope there'd be a little bit more like positivity. It just sounded more like melancholy. What was your thoughts on just kind of that? And do you think he will be here?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, the reports out there, I don't think that they're just rumors. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire with this one, that they were looking at during the trade deadline to see what they could get for him. They were looking for a second rounder, I believe. And that's a pretty steep price for a guy his age. So I think it was very real then. And I think that's what he's reflecting on is that, he's seen guys come and go. Robert Woods, beloved, not to the degree that Cooper Kupp is, but, this team is not afraid to make moves. And it goes back to something I kept saying about Tutu Atwell is like, you got to have a role on this team. And that number one, number two receivers throughout McVay's career have been his offense. That's what that's been about. It's evolved and it's changed over time, but they need to find another receiver to go along with Puka Nacua. I mean, unless Cooper Kupp makes a miraculous turnaround, he's still got some play in him. Obviously, he's made a couple of big plays in the playoffs, important times.
Yeah,
but it's been concerning. And the big question is, what do they see his role on this team if he can't be Cooper Kupp of 2021, or at least some percentage of that, 80%, 75% of that. If he can't, move the needle on this offense, make defenses afraid, that this offense looks a lot different, without that. And we've seen it multiple times. We've seen it with him injured. It's not the same offense. We've seen him without him on the field. It's not the same offense that we've come accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, my prediction is he's going to stick with this team, but I would not be surprised at all. I would not hold that out. I mean, the prediction game is crazy just because there's so many aspects in there. But the Rams have the fewest draft picks currently. They have 6 draft picks. They're not projected to get any comp picks so far this year. We'll see if that changes.
Rare.
Yeah. And the 6 is the fewest they've ever had in the McVay area. They average 9.5 draft picks over that time.
Yeah.
They're used to having a lot more. So if he's a draft pick, that fits more into their model of how they do things. Get a lot of draft picks, a lot of at bats to see if you can hit a home run, and if you don't, you get on first or second base like that. This is the Rams draft strategy, and their team depends on it. You think about Cam Kintrans; he was a comp pick last year. They were able to add him. 4 interceptions. He played 46% of the snaps.
Yeah,
I mean, this is huge. So
great point.
There's that could factor into this decision making, because they'd be able to clear a lot of space on the books. They got a first round pick right now. So they could
turn into 3 or 4.
That could, or that could turn into a first round wide receiver, and their track record drafting wide receivers and picking up receiver talent in free agency has been stellar.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And unless I'm missing something, I think the reason why they have 6 is just because of that trade up for Braden Fisk, losing their second, right? There was no other trades to lose any. I think that's all it is, right?
That's the big one. I mean, they don't have a second rounder right now.
Yeah, for trading up for Fisk last year, but I don't think there was any outstanding trades before that to lose any. They just don't have any comps, and they don't have any multiple from previous years.
Yeah, you usually have 7 picks.
Yeah, exactly.
Or 7 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. So in last year, but they end up last year with 11 or 13 or something. They had
the last 2 years have been insane. Where it's been over 10 both years, 11 and 13, I think. Yeah.
So to your point, they'll have more than 6. There's the way the philosophy of this team. The Rams will not go, even if they go into the draft with 6, they will not end on Saturday with only 6 picks. There's no way. Now, whether that's a Kupp trade or not, here's what I will say, and this is the harsh reality, and this sucks because everyone in LA, everyone just in Rams land, everyone in the Ramley loves Cooper Kupp. There's no way he will be back with this team at the cap number that he is at right now, based on his age, based on injury history, based on the production down the stretch. He's a cap hit of almost $30 million next year. And in his final year contract of 26, I think he's like $27 million. So almost $30 million each of these last 2 years as a cap hit. There's no way. And the Rams, as much as they love and want him back, they business wise, they won't do that, I don't think. So, and this is what's tough for both sides, because both sides want this marriage to stay. I don't think there's any doubt the Rams want him back in any capacity. Just they can't for that number. And I don't think there's a world where Kupp wants to be gone either. But for him, why would he take a pay cut? Like, fans will say, well, just, the organization is giving you a lot. We want you here. Take a pay cut. I get that. But like, you're going to just say, well, okay, yeah, I guess I don't want $29 million. Like, I'll just play here for 12. Like, because right now the Rams would be forced to trade him or cut him.
Yeah.
And they could cut him where he's not going to make that same number at another team. Like he's not going to go re-sign for any team and make anywhere close to 27, 28, 29 million dollars. Like he'll probably re-sign for maybe under 10. So there's a world where he could say, you know what, my market value has fallen. I will restructure, take a pay cut. And that's a conversation they'll have behind closed doors, obviously. So I agree with you, Skinny. I just think he means so much to this organization. I do believe he'll be on this coaching staff in the future. Like I really do. And that doesn't mean next year, but I think in the future he'll be on the staff in some capacity, similar to like, Wes Welker became a receivers coach pretty quickly after he retired, and Keenan McCardell was with the Vikings as their receiver coach. And so I do see that if that's something he wants, unless him and his wife are just loving the podcast game, but he can do that as a coach too. So, and I don't think them cutting him or trading him would necessarily tarnish that. Lots of players move on. It's a business and they come back to their organization they've played with the most. But I just think they'll make something happen, but it will not be at the cap numbers at. So either he's going to take a pay cut or they're going to cut him and he'll test the market. And maybe in some weird, crazy world, the market is so soft for him that he ends up re-signing with the Rams just on a completely new deal. Now I don't know if that's ever happened. But you never know. But I hope he's back. But yeah, Skinny, there's just no way at that cap number he's back next year.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And, you look at what this team needs to do. They have a fair amount of cap space. They're up there in 10, 11, somewhere in terms of the most cap space. So 46 million, 46.6 million. So, but they've got work to do in other places, you got to look at the defense and what are you going to do at safety and cornerback? Everybody but Spates is a free agent in terms of linebackers. And then again at wide receiver as well, Tutu Atwell, DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, all free agents this year. So that's going to need to be addressed as well. So I don't think they're going to be in like a big, cap cutting mood necessarily. But I think you got to find, like you were saying, you got to find the balance of what's commensurate with his production and his role on the team. Do I think that he plays, 90+% of the snaps next year? I find that hard. I would find that very hard to believe, whether because of injury or because of just his ability to do all of the things. He doesn't have the ability to do all the things that he used to do. We don't see a lot of those same Cooper Kupp plays that we used to. Puka Nacua is moving into that role, kind of the bubble screens and the jet motions and that thing. He's not doing those anymore. Yeah, which is good. I mean, he shouldn't be. He can't. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So hopefully he's back. Well, obviously it's a story we'll watch and talk about the entire offseason and see what happens during free agency and draft season. And I had it in front of me. I didn't look, but I mean, his dead money cap hit is fairly large if they were to cut him. That's he doesn't have. Let me just pull it up. How about that? Beauty of the internet. So if they were to, his guaranteed salary this coming year is only $5 million, but his dead money would be $22 million pre-June 1st or $14 million post-June. So a pretty large dead money hit. They'd save $15 million in cap space on that post-June 1st, and they'd only save $7.5 pre-June 1st. So obviously they designate it for a post if they were to cut him. But is it worth cutting a Cooper Kupp to still have $15 million in dead money? We saw with Todd Gurley, so maybe they would. So we'll see. Yeah, it'll be a story we'll be paying attention to the entire offseason, obviously, and let everyone know. But let's move now to the quarterback, Matthew Stafford. After the game, again, these are unfair questions, but they have to be asked. I mean, as a reporter, you got to ask it. It's unfair right after a game ends, a tough loss. So I feel bad for these players. But, when asked about his future, I'm paraphrasing, you can quote it if you have it in front of you. It basically just says, feels like he has football left to play, essentially, which would at this point would make you think, he obviously wants to be back. He's under contract for 2 years, had the restructure this offseason. Now, will the Rams want him back and him back? Impossible question, but I'll toss to you first.
Yeah, it comes back to a question you and I always ask, when people are critical of McVay or something. It's like, who else is out there? Who else can you go get? You want to get Kirk Cousins?
Yeah.
No.
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. Maybe. He's on the maybe list. There's all sorts of reclamation projects out there that they could go. Zach Wilson is available. Jimmy Garoppolo could be re-signed. But ultimately, what we've seen over the years is the only way franchises are successful without a break is if they figure out their quarterback situation before the previous one retires. So, Favre to Rodgers, and now to Love, and then, Manning to Andrew Luck. Yeah. That's where it hits the rubber hits the road, because the draft isn't going to do it unless they want to trade up. And even then, Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, I don't know.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers, I'm not sure about either. None of those guys. And so unless they're orchestrating some crazy trade like Stafford was such an anomaly because it was the perfect storm where the organization had said, we're moving on from Goff. Or it seemed that way at the time.
Yeah.
Proved to be true.
Yeah.
And Stafford wanted out of his situation in Detroit. Perfect marriage, works out just fine. Looking around the league, are there any of those situations with proven commodity quarterbacks that
are not on the age of retirement? Like Kirk Cousins would be the example, but he's like 37, the same age as Stafford. Sorry to cut you off. There's no like 31, 32-year-old that Stafford was in that situation. Maybe Dak Prescott, but
that's who I was thinking. I could see that happening just because everything's crazy there right now, that him wanting out. But I haven't heard any rumblings of that whatsoever. But so they just don't have a lot of options. So I think he'll be back next year. I think we'll see how he plays. And in terms of the Rams do they want him back? If they have some options out there that they like, better than Stafford, which is like I think they want him back because there's nothing else out there.
Yeah. Well, I feel like McVay and Goff were like really close. Obviously, the joke was always about the age. They're close in age. They were close. I think. Was McVay 30, 31, and Goff was probably 22. Age-wise, I think they're like about 10 years apart because, Goff was just drafted the year before and McVay was the youngest coach ever hired. Yeah. But like McVay and Stafford, I feel like if Goff and McVay were close and got along really well, which I think McVay does with everyone, he's just like a likable guy. But I feel like him and this is, you don't make football decisions based on this, but I feel like him and Stafford are like best friends. I mean, the whole deal happened with them just like slinging back tequila shots in Cabo, like just hanging out. And so, I mean, they're basically the same age, right? Almost identical ages. They're obviously a little different stages in life. Sean McVay just had his first kid. Stafford has 4, but they have families now. I feel like they both would want to do at this point in their careers, want to do whatever it takes to keep this going. Because I still kind of believe, like, I think McVay's found that fire again where it's farther down the line he retires, but I still have a little part of me that feels like when Kupp and Stafford are both gone from this team, McVay will decide to retire as well. I still feel like that's a possibility. Now, I do not think that is all the case. If this offseason they decide to trade or cut both Stafford and Kupp, I don't think McVay is going to retire this offseason. I think he's got enough fire back that he's staying for at least the next foreseeable future. So all that being said, I'm rambling, but I think they find a way to get Stafford done. But again, it kind of goes again to what I said with Kupp. I don't know if they will do it at his cap price, and I totally agree with you. Like what's better out there, and people are going to call me crazy here, but Stafford has what? It's $53 million cap hit next year. $53.6 million cap hit. 25. He has a 49.6. The following year, his final year, has a 53.6 million cap hit. Like, when you look at what this team needs, which is not really a lot, I guess, considering how far they made it, but obviously you need some depth. You want to not have that 1-4 start. You want to be able to have some dominance throughout the season and not have to like find a hot hand just to make it. Could they allocate that money to other positions of need if they were, and again, this is just the easy name to throw out, so I'm not saying that they should do this, but if they were to get a Sam Darnold at 28 years old for $23 million for the season, half the price, essentially. Because, I mean, I don't care what anyone says, Sam Darnold had a career year. It seems like, based on conversations, the Vikings will move on from him. He'll still get paid a decent amount, but he's not going to get a 50. I mean, he's going to get 20 to 25 million per year, I think. So I think that's a conversation. And I hope that conversation leads to, again, will Stafford want to take a pay cut? What's his market like if he were to just leave? But my hope is that they'll be able to say, like, look, this is kind of what we think your market is. We want to keep you here. We want you to retire a Ram. We don't have a quarterback contingency plan in place. So, I mean, if they can restructure and get Stafford back for, I wouldn't say half, but I would take Matthew Stafford at $35 million over Sam Darnold at $25 million. I would absolutely take Stafford. But at $50 million, when you have other needs, I mean, that'll be the conversation. And we'll have all offseason to talk, and we're just talking spitballing right now with no real clear plan of like free agency lists and whatnot. So I think based on McVay and his relationship, they'll get it done, and Stafford will still be quarterback, kind of like what you said. I just don't know if it'll just be like, okay, as the status quo is, as it sits, they're going to roll in the next year with how it is. I think there's going to have to be some contractual wiggle room to make it work.
Yeah, and, looking down that list of cap hits, another big question is, what are they going to do with this offensive line?
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
Dotson didn't play as well as he did last year, I don't feel like. Joan Jackson didn't play.
Yeah.
Currently, they don't have a left tackle on their roster.
Yeah, and that's going to, I mean, not to cut you off, but just left tackles aren't cheap. And we saw what they did in almost a panic, if you will, in overpaying Joe Noteboom after Andrew Whitworth retired, because they saw Noteboom as a potential successor at left tackle. So they paid him a hefty contract for not a small sample size. We've seen how that worked out. So are you going to pay Alaric Jackson, who I think is a fine left tackle?
Yeah.
But are you going to give him $20 million a year, which is the going rate for a starting tackle on a second contract?
And I think he's gonna get it. He's been a good starter over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Which was just incredible, his story alone. And then you got Havenstein too, who is the next biggest cap hit, and he's struggling to stay on the field this last year and the year before. I gotta keep my years straight now that we're done with 2024.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be another interesting nugget to watch, is how they kind of untangle that knot.
Yeah, and if you like, and that's what it goes down to too. And where are they? Let me see here. In actual cap space for 46 million. Am I looking at that right?
Yeah, 46.6. Yeah.
So they do have money to play with. And theoretically, then you could give a good chunk of that to Alaric Jackson, get him re-signed. But if he gets what maybe we think of that 20 million-ish, maybe not that much, but let's say 15 million, that leaves you with, 20, what am I terrible at math, 30 million to play with for the entire rest of the offseason, free agency and draft picks. I mean, you're probably going to want to finagle some money elsewhere in restructures, whether that's Stafford or Kupp or both. So a lot to wrap our head around. That's all I'll say. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah. No, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the season is obviously tons of fun, and you learn a lot, but like this one really gets your mind gears churning and grinding sometimes because of all the different ways it could play out. And yeah, I mean, I think they've got to invest. They're going to have to pull a trigger on a linebacker. I don't know. They
won't, but they need to.
Yeah, maybe they'll bring Rosemoon back. I don't know. Spates will take a step forward. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could happen.
Go get Ernest Jones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Pay a premium for him. You got to find another outside cornerback as well. So this season's going to be fun and exciting, and there's so many things up for play. That first round pick, that's something I got my eye on. What is that going to be?
Yeah.
Do they like it? Do they like it at 26? I doubt they do.
Obviously wish we had 2 more games to cover for this team. We were planning on, and still hopefully we'll be there, but planning on being in New Orleans for the Super Bowl on Radio Row like we are every year, and would have loved to be able to get a second opportunity to cover the Rams while there. Then when they were here in LA, we were blessed to be on Radio Row while the Rams were going to be playing at SoFi, and would have been nice to do at the Superdome. But regardless, it's going to be a fantastic offseason. It was a fantastic season to cover. Thank you, Ramley, as always, for riding with us all year long. But don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere all offseason, still 2 shows a week. Hopefully more. I'd love to get even more up. But obviously we got tons of articles at LAFBnetwork.com to have you covered, all of our social content at LAFB Network on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere. I guess we're still on TikTok. I guess it's back now for a little bit. It was gone. It's back. I don't know. Our guy Brandon helps run some of our socials. And so I think he puts stuff on TikTok. I haven't even looked. But everything's LAFB Network, easy to find. So Rams LAFB is the YouTube channel. Please hit that his subscribe button if you have not already. If you've never been to our YouTube channel, it's just Rams LAFB, easy to find. Hit that subscribe. Rams Skinny, anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and obviously everything can be found at LAFBnetwork.com. Blast of a season, plenty more to come. It's going to be a wild off season, and Skinny T, there's no one I'd rather be doing it with. So thank you, my friend. Have a fantastic day. Thank you, Ramley. Be well, be safe. Talk to you all very soon.